Hopefully you have a good handle now on solving equations. Now we're going to take a look at applications where we have word problems and converting English into algebra and solving these word problems. We'll also be dealing with consecutive numbers here, so let's go on. If a number is decreased by 36 and the result is 76 less than twice the number, what is the number? Now, for word problems, the strategy is you read it once and you kind of get familiar with the words. Then you read it again and try to figure out what they're asking. And you may have to read it a third time. And this is what they'll be showing you. So, first of all, what do we decide to be the unknown? That is the variable. And now we can use the letter X. And I see here they're using the letter N. Let N be the unknown number. So, if a number, that's going to be an N, is decreased by 36, well, there it is, N minus 36. The results, and the item for results is the equal sign, is 76 less, and twice the number. Well, we had this before. Twice the number less 76. So often in word problems you need to read, reread, determine a variable, the letter N, or if it's Albert you might say A, or if it's children you might say C, or you could use the X as you define it, and then think about putting it into an equation, and then check to make sure it's reasonable. And then you go on to solve. And we're not going to go into great detail of that here. But then you see that when you finally solve for N, N equals 40. And if you put it into your original equation, 40 is a solution and seems reasonable. All right, let's take a look at this. Again, you're pausing the tape, thinking about it, reading it more than once. 3 times the sum. Now remember when we spoke of sum, we're going to put that in a parenthesis. A number in 5 is equal to, that's going to be your equal sign, twice the number plus 5. Now we had done these before in pieces. Here they're going to say let X equal the unknown number, which is often the case. So we indicate a sum of a number in 5 by putting it in a parenthesis, and 3 times that equals twice the number plus 5. Now, as you go through these slides, you may want to practice a little bit before you see the answer to see if, in fact, you can get to a reasonable equation. So, solving this, we clear parentheses. We get all the variables on one side, all the numbers on the other, and we get X equals a negative 10. All right, one integer is 4 more than 3 times a second integer. Their sum is 24. What are the 2 integers? Well, let n, in this case, equal the second integer. Then the first integer will be 3 times the second integer plus 4. So the first integer plus the second integer, they're saying their sum is 24. And then you put your values, the first integer, the second integer, solve it, n is the integer, but then you want the second integer as well. So you put the 5 where the n is. This will give you 15 plus 4 equals 19. Now we're going into another topic that relates to many word problems where they're asking for consecutive integers. Now remember, integers are things like 1, 2, 3, -5, -4, this type of number. So if you're dealing with consecutive integers, they're giving you this thumbs up here that you will not be getting fractions. Fractions are not integers. So if you have a fraction, you realize you made a mistake somewhere. This is a direction to check out your work. But let's give you some background on this. And I skip those quickly because I like to do this. So let's check this out here. Now, if we have consecutive integers, such as 5, 6, and 7, these are consecutive integers, and you want to write 3 consecutive integers using algebra. So let x be the first integer. Now we know it's 5, but we're saying perhaps we didn't know it was 5. We're going to call it x. Well, how would we write 6, which would be the next consecutive integer, if x is our first integer, which we know is a 5? How do we write 6 using x? And if you said x plus 1, then you have the next consecutive integer. And the one after that, again, using x as our 5, how do we get 7? Well, x plus 2. So again, take some notes on this. In algebra, this is always the way to write consecutive integers. If this is 9, then this is 10, and this is 11. If this is 20, then this is 21 and 22. All right, now let's do consecutive odd integers. And that would be like 5, 7, and then this would be 9. Now these would be 3 consecutive odd integers. And x is going to be our first integer. Now, how would I write 7? Well, how many do I have to add to 5 to get 7? Well, I'd have to add 2. And to get 9, if x is 5, I'd have to add 4. So this is the algebraic way of expressing 3 consecutive odd integers. Now the other one is even integers. Now here we have a 6, 8, 10. Now x is my first even integer, which will be x. How do we get an 8, our next even integer? Well, we add 2. And the next even integer, if x is our first, which is 6, and you add 4. Now, this is where it is somewhat confusing for students. Notice that this line, I'll change colors here. I got the wrong line there. I want to get the right line. There we go. And this line are exactly the same. Well, how could these be odd and these be even if they're the same? Well, the key is, how do you define your first integer? If your first integer is odd, then by adding 2, you get the next odd. If it's even, by defining your first term as even, and that's the key, defining the first term. If you're defining your first term as odd, then adding 2 gets the next odd. If you define your first term as even, then by adding 2 you get the next even. So there's a little bit of a mystery, but the key is how you define your first term. Okay, let's go on then to what is described here. 3 consecutive odd integers are such that their sum is a negative 3. So, what's the first integer? X. What's your next integer? Well, we said if they were odd, it was going to be x plus 2. And the next odd integer, we said it was x plus 4 from our little table we had here. And the sum of all of these is a negative 3. So there's your equation. These are 3 consecutive odd integers because we're defining our first integer as odd. So we group like terms. 3x plus 6 equals a negative 3. We're going to transpose the 6 to this side where it becomes a negative 6 and a 3 is a negative 9. So we then divide both sides by 3. We get x equals a negative 9. How about a negative 3 here? That'll be better. It was on a roll there. Let's get my eraser going. Here we go. Sorry about that. So this is your first integer. So negative 3, we're going to add 2 is negative 1. We're going to add 2, that's going to be a 1. So these are your 3 consecutive odd integers. And if you add them up, it ends up, these just cancel out and you end up with a negative 3. So that one worked. So let's check it out here. Oh, I don't like the way they did that. I'll keep my way. And we get the same answer. I don't know why they went that way here. All right. Let's do an application problem here. Joe pays $800 per month to rent an apartment. If this is 2/5 of his monthly income, what is his monthly income? Well, do we know what the monthly income is? No. So that will be our unknown. So let X equals Joe's monthly income. So 2/5 of this unknown monthly income equals the rent, which is $800. So there's our equation. 2/5 of his monthly income is this. Now here's a case where we're going to use the reciprocal to find out what X is. And I'm assuming that's what they're doing, yes. So all of these cancel out. And we divide 2 into this, get 400. So 5 times 400 should be 2,000. That's his monthly income. A student bought a calculator and a textbook for this. If the textbook costs this more than the calculator, what was the cost of each item? And the answer is, what is the cost of the calculator? We don't know that. So let X equal the cost of the calculator. So then the cost of the textbook is X plus the 2050, more than the cost of the calculator. Now the sum of these two things will be your total. So there's the textbook, there's the calculator, there's the total. Group like terms. Subtract the 2050 from both sides. Now divide by 2. There is the cost of the calculator. Now, of course, if we subtract the cost of the calculator from the total, or in this case, if you add the 2050, this will give you the cost of the textbooks. And that completes this. Now, in doing word problems, again, we went through this somewhat quickly. The key is to pause, to study. What's your variable? In some cases, you need to do some calculation of what formula to use, this type of thing. And is your answer reasonable? And are you answering the question that was asked in the problem?